Hello, in this training video, we will cover line item posting of insurance payments. To begin posting your payments in Revolution EHR, please go to the accounting module. The accounting module is the dollar bill icon in the upper left corner. Once you're hovering over the accounting module, please choose invoices. Once you're on the invoice screen, you'll notice you have filters here in the upper half of the screen. When you're working with your payments, you'll only be working with the filter location here in the upper left. If you have one location, you can keep it set to the location name. If you have multiple locations and you want to pull all invoices for all of those locations into your insurance payments, please click the arrow in the location filter, choose the X, so that it sets the filter for all locations. Once you have your filter set, come down here to Receive Payment and choose your Insurance Payment button. This brings you to a screen with your insurance payers. This is all of your insurance payers that have an active authorized invoice that populates into this screen. It will not be every insurance payer that's under your vendors and partners. Again, it's only going to be those with an active authorized invoice. Once you have your payer screen up here, go ahead and choose your insurance company that you're looking to post the payment. Once you're on your payment screen, we have information that needs filled up at the top. We have our payment amount. This would be the amount of your EOB, the overall payment that you're getting from your insurance company. We have our payment method. This will be used to determine what type of payment method you have. It does have a default that's set up in System Admin, Vendors and Partners. Open your insurance company. There's an accounting area there that lets you set up the payment method. You have the reference check, which you can populate the information from your payment. And then we have our payment date. The payment date that you enter in this payment date field is the date that it's going to populate on your deposit report. The location is going to be the same. The location entered here is the location that the overall payment here is going to populate into your deposit report. If you have various locations and various invoices for each location, those invoices will be paid for that location. Just the physical deposit will show in your deposit report for the location mentioned here. You have a comment section. Any information entered in the comment section will populate for every patient that the payment is applied to. So we do recommend keeping this non-specific. Over here to the far right, we have our write-off reasons. These write-off reasons, once you select here, will add a column into each one of your payment items for your invoices. If you have a write-off reason that you need, but it's not listed here, you can add additional write-off reasons under System Admin, Data Configuration, Accounting. Let me go ahead and pick my last write-off reason here. I'll go ahead and fill in my reference check. And then I'll go ahead and begin working with my patients. I'll take my first patient from my EOB and I'll click my items column. Now over here, you'll notice that there's an items column and a transfer column. Both of them have a $0 when you first start posting your payment and an underline appears. These are hyperlinks into a new screen. Both the items and the transfer column hyperlink leads to the same screen. Once you're on your payment item for your specific invoice, you'll see the invoice number up at the top, plus your patient name. You have transfer type. This allows you to choose an additional transfer if needed. Maybe you need to transfer coinsurance or copay to the patient or to a secondary insurance, or you can choose write-off if the choices you made on the first screen when you're looking at your EOB, you realize you need to add an additional one. You'll notice when I chose write-off that the other information that displayed below disappeared. That's because that's to go with the transfer reason, whether you're transferring it to the patient or to the insurance. You'll notice if you have the patient dial, you have a new invoice option. If there's an existing invoice, which is a pending invoice already created for the patient, it will default for that existing invoice. If you need to create a copay for the patient and it needs to be going to a new invoice or this invoice is not correct, you can choose a correct one if you have multiple ones, but most likely you'll be choosing new invoice. And again, this existing invoice only populates if the patient has a pending active invoice. We have our include all items and transfer. If you're going to transfer something and you place a check mark in this box or it's already defaulted from your system admin settings, every line item will populate and transfer to the patient invoice. Even if it's a $0 amount, it'll just list the amount and that the patient's responsibility, or if it went to a new insurance, that responsibility balance owed is $0. It just allows the line item items to list to that new invoice. In this instance, I have a payment only for my patient. There's no transfers that I need to worry about or copays, so I'm going to go ahead and not populate any information here and just enter my payment. When I enter my payment, my amount under my payment column populates. I don't have any lab charges to correlate with my transfer number 1 column. I do have some contractual write-offs that I'll go ahead and enter that remaining balance. You'll notice once I enter my last write-off amount here in my transfer number 2 column, which correlates to my write-off reason down here in the lower left, my balance went to 0. It shows that my items paid is 115. That's the exact amount that my EOB is paying for this patient for this line item service. I'm going to go ahead and select Save. You'll notice that my payment items column populated over here into my payment screen and that my payment and my items match. For the most part, your payment and your items amount should match. If they do not, you'll want to look at your EOB and your invoice to determine why. I'm going to go ahead and work on my next patient, which is again Donald Duck. So on my EOB, my patient does have a copay, but if you notice over here, I've got some items under my adjustment column. This is information that is entered before I received a payment when the original invoice was created. And if I hover over, I can see the reason for this amount. This says that a $15 co-insurance copay was sent to the patient, and then I'm seeing that for both line items. When I look at my EOB, it does say the patient was responsible for a total of a $30 copay for a single vision lenses. So that's letting me know that my copay amount has been collected. I can go ahead and enter my payment amount. In this instance, my insurance company is taking money away from me due to lab charges on my single vision lenses in the amount of $20. You can either enter it as a full $20 on one line item, or you can break it down between your 2 items. This is office preference. Whichever works best for your office is the action that you'll perform. What you want to make sure is that when your payments are all entered here, that the amount insurance is paying for the patient, that it matches. So here I have my negative $20. You'll notice that my patient balance at the far right increased when I entered these minus 10 amounts. I'm going to go ahead in my lab charge write-off reason, enter my $10 to bring my balance over here on the far right back down to my contractual write-off and to populate my full lab charges from my EOB. And you'll see that total here. At this point, I'll go ahead and write off my remaining balances. You'll notice that my balance for each line item is at 0. My items paid is negative 20, which matches my EOB, and then I'll go ahead and select Save. One other item to note, once you save and it brings the amount over to this payments column, you'll notice on the far right that the box automatically checks for the invoice that you've worked with. I'll go ahead and enter this patient. I do have a $10 copay, and if I look under my adjustment column, there's nothing for me to hover over. There's no separate line item stating that a copay was taken. I'm going to go ahead and use my transfer type and transfer reason here in the upper left to enter a co-insurance copay for my patient. I do want a brand new invoice. I don't want to use any existing invoice, so I'll go ahead and make sure my new invoice style is chosen. I'll go ahead and select Include All Items and Transfer. That can stay populated, and I'll select Add Transfer Write-Off Reason. This creates a new column. It's being titled Transfer Number 3. That number correlates down here in the lower left-hand corner. Has my transfer type with a reason for this transfer and that it's going to the patient and that I have a new invoice created. I'm going to go ahead and enter my patient responsibility. And then I can enter my insurance payment amount. Once I have my insurance payment amount, I can go ahead and skip my lab charge column because I don't have any lab charges for this. It's service only invoice. And then I'll go ahead and enter my contractual write-off balance. Again, you'll notice my balance goes to 0. My items paid is $132.33, and I can go ahead and select Save. Let me go ahead and work our next patient, which is going to be this Gabe Fuzzy Socks here. It looks like this line item isn't matching my EOB. As Gabe's Fuzzy Socks has multiple EOBs, I'm going to need to make sure I choose the right one. So I'll come back and choose that next one. This one is matching my service code fees and my unit price on my EOB. So I'll go ahead and accept my payment for this. Looking at my EOB further, I notice I do have a copay. Again, I have no amounts to hover over here to see if my copay was already collected. So I'll go ahead and first come up here to my transfer type reason and create my transfer. Again, I'm creating an invoice for my patient, and it's going to be a new invoice. You'll notice existing invoice did not appear. That's because the patient does not have any pending invoices. When I select Add Transfer Items, it's going to go ahead and create another column, and my transfer reason is down here in the lower left. First, I'm going to go ahead and enter my patient responsibility, and then I'll enter my payment amount. Again, I can skip my lab charge column as this is a services only, and then I can enter my contractual write-off amount. Again, my line items balance to 0, and I can select Save. I'll come down here and work my next patient, which is going to be Miss Stormy Gray here. Again, I'm selecting my hyperlink to get to my payment items screen. In this instance, I do have optical order charges. So looking at my EOB, I do see that I have some lab charges that I'll be applying on this payment. So the first thing I like to do is first confirm that I have my copay amount. When I look at my patient EOB, it does show that my copay is $513. Again, I can hover over each of these to confirm that it says coinsurance, copay, or patient responsibility, whatever reason it was used to transfer the amount to the patient. And then I can go ahead and enter my payment. Now, you can either use your mouse to move between each field, or you can select your tab button, and this will populate down to the next area. Again, for my payment for my bifocal lenses, it's a total of $16. I have 2 line items. I'm going to go ahead and break it up. If you'd prefer, you can put the $16 on just 1 line item instead of breaking it up. It's office preference. Once I come to my photochromic line item, I notice on my EOB that lab charges are being taken away. This is affecting my payment total, as that lab charge is pulling the amount from my payment from the insurance company. So I'll go ahead and enter a minus 35. You'll notice to the far right that my balance did increase by that minus 35 amount. I've got a lab charge for my AR, again increasing my balance on the far right, that negative amount. My UV has a lab charge, and my progressives have a lab charge. So I'll go ahead and enter those amounts. Once I have my payment entered, I notice that this minus 102 is the full amount that the insurance company is saying was my payment from them. In this instance, it's a negative 102. Once I have my payment entered and that it's matching my EOB, then I'll go ahead and enter my lab charges. My lab charges are going to correlate with my transfer column number 1, which I note down here. It says dark night lab charges. So I'll go ahead and enter those. And again, you can either use your mouse or you can tab through. As I enter my lab charges under my transfer column, you'll notice that on the far right, my balance is decreasing by that lab charge amount. Once I'm done, my last remaining step is to write off my contractual balances according to my EOB. So I'll go ahead and enter those. And once I have my contractual write-offs entered, I have my payments, I have my lab charges that are all matching to my EOB. My balance for each line item goes to 0. I have an items paid of negative $102, which is what is reflected in my EOB. I'll go ahead and select Save. My $102 payment also again shows in my payment column. It matches my items column, and I can continue working with my next patient. So my next patient is Amy. You'll notice that when I'm looking at my EOB, I notice that I don't have any patient copay. I just have insurance payment. When I look over here, I'll just go ahead and enter my correct payment information here. In this one on my EOB, I actually have a payment going to a secondary insurance, which is going to be the patient coinsurance copay. I don't have any coinsurance copay here, so I'll go ahead and choose that coinsurance copay reason. In this instance, instead of patient, I'm going to create a transfer to the insurance company. I'll choose her insurance that's been entered in her insurance policy, which allows it to populate here in this field. And then I'll click my Add Transfer Write-Off button. It is going to create another column for me, correlates to my reason down here, and it states it's going to extremely special insurance, which is my secondary payer. I'll go ahead and enter that secondary payer responsibility amount that's going to be picked up. My payment amount of $87.58, remaining amount after my coinsurance copay is transferred to the secondary. I'm going to go ahead and write that off. Go ahead and select Save. Any transfer column that you create inside that payment screen, once you apply your payment, that will create the new invoice. Just a few patients left. We have Sarah Pear here. And this is the patient that has no copay. You'll notice there are some adjustments over here when I hover over it. As my patient EOB says the patient doesn't have any responsibility. These are just write-offs that were already entered previously before this payment was received. So I just have the remaining balance left over and any additional write-offs to enter. So my payment amount matches. I'll go ahead and write off my remaining amount. Again, my balances go to 0 and I'll choose save. The last patient is another lab order with invoices. So let me go ahead and select that. And here I have my adjustment column, which reflects my patient responsibility for the most part. As you saw in that last example, sometimes you can have additional write-offs if they were entered beforehand. You can just hover over each one to confirm that what's listed is going to be your co-insurance copay. The total of this adjustment column just populates here. You can confirm that with your EOB. Once done, you can go ahead and start entering your payment. You can use your tab button to move through. I prefer to break up my payment, but it is not required for your single vision lenses or your bifocal lenses. You can put the amount on just one line item. For my photochromic lenses, again, I have some lab charges that are pulling money away from my full payment. My AR and my Travix line items. My last item has a positive payment amount, so my overall payment is a negative $80 from the insurance company. I'll go ahead and enter my lab amounts into my lab write-off to decrease my balance on the far right to what would be my contractual write-off amounts. You'll notice again that these columns add up the total here at the bottom of each column. At this point, I just need to write off my remaining balance. And once my total balance is, I'll go ahead and select Save. You'll see my payment populated here. Now you'll notice down here at the bottom, my payment amount is bold and it's dark and it matches my payment amount in the upper right-hand corner. If my payment amount didn't match, it would go red down here at the bottom. That would be a flag for me to check out my payment amount in the top of my screen to make sure it matches my EOB and that my balance payment down here matches my EOB. If the amount's balanced, you'll go ahead and select Apply Payment. If I was to apply this payment with the amounts being different and it's showing in red, I'll actually get an error message that populates up at the top of the screen. This one says the sum of the payment must match the payment amount, so this amount and this amount must match. Since I know $215.91 is my correct payment, I'm going to go ahead and change that back, and I'll select Apply Payment. My payment will process. Once it's finished, it'll bring me back to my invoice screen where I was originally before I selected insurance payment. All the invoices that I worked with now show a status of paid for that patient and that it's been completed. Some helpful tips that you might find helpful as you're posting a payment. If you're ever working with a payment and you need to step away from that payment, you have a Save as Pending button down here in the lower half of the screen. Select Save as Pending. This saves your payment. It does not apply it. It does not put it on any of your reports. It just sets it aside so that you continue working with it later. If you save a payment, to open that payment, you need to go to your dollar bill module, choose Payments, and from your payment screen, use these filters to look for your pending payment. You can keep it narrowed by your location if you're pulling for a specific payment that you entered for that location. Change your payer type to insurance, and then pending. If you know the payment date, you can enter that. If you're not sure about the location, you just know that it's an insurance and it's pending, you can set those two filters and select search, and it'll populate here. And then to continue working with it, you would just select it so it opens up. You will need to enter your write-off reasons again. Those remove from this screen. If you had data entered in a patient invoice, that data will remain. You would just need to add your write-off reasons so you can continue working with the ones that you need to finish filling out to complete your EOB. Other areas I mentioned when posting a payment is system admin, vendors and partners, insurance company. Here, when you open your insurance payment, there's an accounting information field. You can choose your most common default payment method here. This sets the default when you're receiving a payment. The other area we discussed was the balance write-off reason or transfer reason. You can create those additional reasons here under System Admin, Data Configuration, Accounting, and then you have balance transfer reason or balance write-off reason. Once you create these new balance transfer or write-off reason, you will need to log out and log back in as it's a practice change. This has been an accounting video for how to post insurance payments by line item. If you have any questions, please call, email, or live chat into customer support.